I saw your post immediately after that vote, and at the end of it, for you, 2024 may be slipping away from the NDC. How bad can what happened on Friday into Saturday hit the NDC in an upcoming election for you?
Well, maybe that was an advocacy point I was actually trying to make, because as you see, in a representative democracy, clearly speaking, especially the kinds of democratic practice we have in this part of our world, you can only hope that the representatives in parliament, the opposing side, will do the needful. Because some of us can shout, and indeed we've been shouting, we've been saying all the right things, and we never really get to be listened to. So the last defense, the last form of defense is the representatives in parliament. And they have all the arsenal, they have all the research, they have all the arguments that have been canvassed by civil society actors and indeed ordinary Ghanaians. And so this particular issue was quite a thorny one. It was a very important matter, especially because we've been saying time without number that the kind of administration we are running, the type of government systems we are running can no longer be sustained. And our finances can no longer cater to the needs of these ever-bloating, debt-reading type of governance system that we have adopted for ourselves. So the least we expected was some form of representation that would send signals to the government, especially the president, that it's no longer rhetoric, that the concerns of the Ghanaians express about the size of government, it's no longer funny, essentially, and that there are some serious persons who think that these matters must be treated with all the necessary attention and the urgency with which it must be attended with all the necessary attention and urgency. So I was quite really surprised and quite disappointed at the same time that this actually happened. But let me just say that maybe on hindsight, the strategy the caucus should have adopted, and maybe the party should have adopted, should have been a boycott, because then you would not have anybody sitting in parliament, because you will not be seated there in any case to vote anyway, right? And that would have been much louder, and then would have saved ourselves this witch hunting and name calling that is actually going on right now. This sounds more like a Gestapo at work, where people are now trying to fish out people who must have voted one way or the other. I'm sure strategy-wise, I think it was a big mistake, especially when previous appointments have been, the similar situations have occurred with previous appointments. In a hung parliament, the opposition essentially would have the powers of, blockade in terms of the financial plans or programs of the government, call for a proper review, or just review, make sure that the people that the president brings as ministers are properly vetted. And of course, the power of censure. I know the opposition has exercised the power of censure once, they were not successful. But on appointment, I don't think they've been quite successful at all. And on this particular one, I thought the strategy should have been a boycott rather than, asking people to vote secretly. And I do not really buy this whole argument about personal relationships that have been built, religious affiliations, tribal connections. It's actually quite frankly silly, because you see, we are trying to build for ourselves a country and a democracy that is devoid of conflict of interest. How do we cite the president for conflict of interest in one instance in the appointment of his relatives, and then okay the fact that because of personal relationships, tribal affiliations, and indeed religious connections, some people decide that they will vote for persons they work with simply because, that should be the order of the day. There's a much larger issue to be discussed. The fiscal situation of this country is no longer funny. And I think we've given the president enough room, and I think we've given him an escape route once more, because we've not been able to bite as we should have.